Hello, let's see how you can import data to Tolgee platform and export data from Tolgee platform. Let's start with something simple. Here we have a simple JSON with few keys, and we are going to import this JSON to Tolgee platform. So what I'm going to do is drag and drop this JSON file, this drop zone, and now I have seen that it's uploaded and imported. The data are prepared for the import. So I have some elements I can control on the file I imported here. So I have the language. I can select the language to which I would like to import. It automatically guesses the language. So from the file name, it correctly guessed it's going to be English file. So I'm going to keep this as it is. Now I can choose namespace. We can keep this untouched for now, and we can get into it later. We got the file name, and here we can see how many translations we are importing from the file. Here we can see it's 50, and when I click on the 15 button, I can see what keys are going to be imported. So here I can see that I have, for example, add button. Here I have some string which has some placeholder in it. This test is a placeholder and stuff like that. And here I can see conflicts. Currently we have empty project. So as you can see in the translations view, there is nothing currently. So we are importing to empty project. And so we have no conflicts. So yeah, that's cool. I can hit import, and when we're gonna go to the translations view, we got the data imported. This is the most simple case, but there are more options to do with the import. I have prepared a file called en_conflicts here, and when I drop it here, I can see that the language wasn't guessed correctly. So now I can choose the language like this. And when I chose the English, I can see that there are 2 unresolved conflicts. What I can do is to go to the conflicts resolution dialog by hitting this button. And here I can basically choose what translations are going to be used. So in the first column, I can see the translations which are already in the platform, which have been imported before. And in the right column, I can see the translations which are coming from the new file. So I can select it manually for each string. So for this one, I would choose the create, which is the new one. And for this one, I would keep the old, which is share. I can also click this to accept all old translations, or I can click here to accept all imported. Now, when I close it, I can see my conflicts are resolved because there is we are going to import 2 of 2. And when I hit import, I have my keys imported. Let's look into ICU message format, which is a standard from Unicode, into Tolgee Universal ICU placeholders and how it's related to importing data from different file formats. First, let's look into what's ICU message format. We have a doc page about this, and in this doc page, you can read more about the syntax of ICU message format. But what's important for now is how ICU message format is handling the variables or the placeholders in the string. So when I would like to provide, for example, some parameter, like in this case name, I have to wrap it into the curly brackets, like it's here. When I would like to provide a plural, I use this kind of syntax where I define the variable name or the placeholder name. I say the type of it. So in this case, it's plural. And here I can specify all the plural forms. For English, this is easy because we have just 2 plural forms, one and other, and we are fine with that. But in other languages, like for example, Czech language, which is my native, we have 4 of these forms. Or we render different value or different string for the few, which is the form which we use between 2 and 5. when the number of dogs is between 2 and 5, we have to render different form of the dog word. So it's not that simple as it might sound for the English speakers to render the string correctly. This can be a kind of complicated thing. So in Tolgee, we natively store the strings in this format. And to be able to basically convert the strings between formats, we are converting the strings or the messages to the placeholder format, which is ICU. And when we are exporting the strings, we can convert the strings from the ICU to the desired message format for the target. Now let's see in an example how it works. When we import, for example, Android file, we are going to export it to the iOS file format. I have prepared this strings.xml file, so I'm going to import it here. I have to choose the language for it, and when I'm going to hit this translation count button, I can see that the number of docs I can also show you how the file looks like. It looks like this. In Java, we have this %d placeholders used for numbers, and we are converting this %ds to the ICU placeholders. So now I'm going to import it. I'm going to show you how it looks like when it's imported. So here we have the English value. Nothing else is important for us. And here we can see we have this strings visualized. So this placeholder is visualized. So our translators don't have to care about the syntax. But if we would like to see the syntax, we can switch here and we can see that we are using this hash, which in ICU plurals is the value we provided to the message formatter function. For this simple key, we can see that we have the string visualized. If I'm going to open it and I'm going to click this show code button, I can see that the %d parameter was converted to a ICU parameter called 0, and the type is number because it was %d in the Android, which is in Java usually used for the numbers. So this is cool. Now I have it imported in the ICU message format, so I don't have to care about anything basically. And when I'm gonna export that, for example, to iOS, which is the .strings.stringsdict file format, I'm gonna export it and I'm gonna show the results. So in .strings, for example, you can see that my value Peter's age was converted to %LLD, which is correct for the Apple. So now I can use the same keys for Android and Apple platforms, and that works because we are converting the strings to the universal ICU message format, which we can convert back to the target file formats as you choose for the export. Let's see what's going to happen when we disable the conversion to ICU message format. I'm going to disable this convert placeholders to the Tolgee universal ICU. And now I'm going to import the strings.xml file. I'm going to choose English again. And here you can see that the placeholders wasn't converted. And now when I'm going to hit import, now you can see the data are imported without the ICU conversion. We don't have these placeholders visualized. We have just these ugly %d strings there. Now there is one tricky thing, because on the project level, we have the ICU placeholders enabled, which means the Tolgee considers all the strings to be in the ICU. And now, when we're going to export data from Tolgee back to the Android, I'm going to show you here, I'm going to hit export, and now you can see the %d was actually escaped. And that's wrong. That's not going to work in your Android project. And that's because we have to basically escape that because we consider that all placeholders in the project are in the ICU, and all the person sign have to be escaped to be rendered as a person sign in the exported file. So to avoid this and to export the data correctly without escaping, you have to disable the Tolgee ICU placeholders on the project level. So I'm going to go to the project settings, to advanced, and I'm going to uncheck this use Tolgee universal ICU placeholders. Now, when I'm going to export that back to the Android, this is the result. So we don't have the person D escaped, and it's correctly exported as it was imported. However, if you would like to use your project with different file formats, so you would like to, for example, import it from Android and then export the same keys for iOS, which can be pretty useful for if you develop a mobile app for multiple platforms, then I strongly recommend you to keep the Tolgee ICU placeholders enabled and to convert the placeholders to the ICU, because then you can reuse the keys. You have the messages highlighted correctly or visualized correctly, and everything works as it was designed by us in Tolgee. There's few more things in the import page we have to cover. One of the things is this override key descriptions checkbox, which you can enable if you would like to replace the descriptions coming from the files into the key descriptions in Tolgee platform. So you can basically replace the descriptions in Tolgee platform with the comments coming from the files. So this is useful basically if your code is the source of truth and you would like to use it and update the key descriptions with the stuff from the files. And this create new keys checkbox, when it's enabled, it means new keys can be created in Tolgee. If I'm going to uncheck it like this and hit import, you can already see that there is like 0 translations to import. And that because the key doesn't exist yet in Tolgee platform. If I'm going to check it back, then 15 new keys going to be created and all of these keys are new. The last thing to explain on the import page is the namespace. We can select namespace for each file, and then the file is going to be imported into special namespace for it. This part is a bit tricky because namespaces are not here to organize your data. Namespaces are here if you want to export your data into separate files. And every time you export data in namespaces, they are exported in separate files. That's why they exist. So users usually tend to fall into this trap that they import the data into separate namespaces, thinking that it's going to be just there for organization and then they will export the data in one large bundle, but this is not possible. So if you would like to organize your data, then use tags. If you would like to export the data into separate files, then use namespaces. To import data into specific namespace, you can basically create new namespace here, or you can choose existing namespace. Then you can hit import and you have the data imported into the specific namespace. So it's visible here that all of my data are in this app namespace. Now let's look into the export. As you can see, we have some data imported from the previous steps. So now we would like to export them, right? So we can go to the export section, which I'm going to select from the menu. And now we have various controlling elements here. We can select the state to import. So for example, when I uncheck the untranslated, which is by default unchecked, it's not going to export empty keys. Usually you don't need them. You can select languages and you can select format. So you can choose from various formats. And again, if we are using Tolgee ICU placeholders, then the placeholders will be correctly exported for each file. For namespaces, you can select again which namespaces are going to be exported. We have only the default none namespace here, so it's our only option now. When I hit export, my data are exported in one zip bundle containing all of the translations I have exported. If you would like to automate these processes, which is usually useful when you are setting some pipeline or workflow for your company or project, then I strongly recommend to use Tolgee CLI. Tolgee CLI is a command line tool which you can configure in your project, and then you can automatically push and pull the keys from Tolgee platform and to Tolgee platform. For this, you can use this push and pull command. So to push data from your code base to Tolgee, you use the push command, which is the import. Basically, it's the same thing as importing the keys to Tolgee, but we are looking to it from the code perspective. So we are taking the data from code and pushing it to Tolgee platform. We have multiple configuration options here. We can even configure the format for it, so we can stick with single format, which is strongly recommended. So here we have the project configuration file example, and we can say that we are working with the JSON Tolgee format, or with, for example, the JSON with Ruby placeholders, right? And we cannot do this in the UI import. So what can happen is that sometimes the detection can go wrong, and the strings can be imported different way than you want it if you are doing it via the UI. That's why we recommend, if you're doing the process repeatedly, then configure the CLI for that and do it, for example, in your GitHub Actions workflow or GitLab CI/CD workflow to do that automatically. But always have your configuration file stored in the repository in your code base, so you can reliably use Tolgee CLI with fixed configuration to avoid any possible point of failures. To pull strings from Tolgee platform, you can use the pull command. There you have multiple configuration options or parameters which you can provide to the command, and this is useful because there is like more possible parameters than in the UI. For example, you can filter tags, or you can even exclude tags, and stuff like that. This can be also pretty useful if you would like to do some advanced developer stuff with your data to export. And that's it. Now you know how to import and export data from Tolgee with confidence. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you like these videos and you would like to know more about Tolgee, just subscribe. Bye-bye.